Hello APUSH Nation, and welcome to this edition of APUSH on the Road. Today we're coming to you from the beautiful St. John's Church in Cold Spring Harbor, built in 1835. Now you might know Cold Spring Harbor as a lovely village on the North Shore straddling the Nassau and Suffolk border, or you may know it for its world-famous laboratory, or even for loud motorcycles. You might even know it for the fish hatchery from when you were a little kid, or a sometime athletic rival for Garden City's lacrosse, field hockey, and soccer teams. But did you know that 200 years ago, Cold Spring Harbor was one of the world's primary and most active whaling ports? Today on APUSH on the Road. Hi guys, we're here in sunny, beautiful Cold Spring Harbor, but you don't want to see me, you want to see the harbor, don't you? Here's that beautiful harbor that I promised. Well, you can see by the virtue of this lovely, fresh, clean water, maybe not so fresh or clean as it used to be, but still beautiful, calm waters, that this was a wonderful port and a wonderful harbor for ships to come in and out of. You know, whaling was something that had been done by the early native people of Long Island all through the 1600s and into the 1700s. American colonists also joined in on that whaling, but it was largely whale carcasses that washed up along the southern shore of Long Island. It wasn't until the mid-1700s when it became increasingly difficult to find whales near the Atlantic coast that you started to see widespread expeditions throughout the world. The American whaling fleet expanded its operations and headed out to the whale-rich waters of the Arctic and the Antarctic. That was only possible because of the changes that had happened in technology. Whaling in the United States hit its peak in the early 1820s, all throughout the 1850s. New technologies, including things like gun-loaded harpoons and steamships, made whalers all around the world more efficient. And that adventurous spirit of the market revolution, which had really gripped the northern part of the United States and the West, as well as the capital that was now available to invest in these whaling expeditions, propelled ships from Cold Spring Harbor, Sag Harbor on the east end of Long Island, and the rest of the American whaling fleet into the deep, deep, dark places of the world, the South Atlantic, the Pacific, and even the Indian Ocean. Whaling was a multi-million-dollar industry in the mid-1800s. Eventually, kerosene, petroleum, and other fossil fuels became much more popular and reliable and accessible than whale oil. The industry began to drop in the 1850s, and by the end of the Civil War had plummeted to its prior status as the primary source of oil for the country. That once bustling whale industry here in Cold Spring Harbor had to transition, and as it gave way to a more genteel world, Cold Spring Harbor became a kind of tourist spot. And especially as New York grew and evolved in the 1860s and 70s and 80s in what we'll call the Gilded Age, this became a welcome respite from the hustle and bustle of New York City. Well, here we are in Main Street at the Cold Spring Harbor Whaling Museum. And what a perfect museum to reflect on the history of this neat little town. Whaling was such a part of the identity of Cold Spring Harbor for so many decades. And it's so interesting to think that the entire town had to remake itself when the whaling industry died out. We have to remember that that market revolution provided opportunities for new businesses, but often at the expense of the old ones. The once vital whale oil industry was replaced with other sources of fuel, and Cold Spring Harbor's identity as a whaling town became part of its past. Well, thanks for joining us today on APUSH on the Road. Be sure to check out links in the description box of this video. And don't forget to use this channel for unit overviews, content spotlights, and of course, other episodes of APUSH on the Road. We'll see you next time.